YouTube has been around for 20 years. We've been around posting on YouTube for 15. I started 5 years into it. Our first YouTube videos, they limited how long you could put a video on there. So all our videos are pretty short, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. But my first video that was a little bit longer was 4 years later. Actually, it was 2012, I think it was. But it was at the National Beauty Tools Sharpeners Guild. And that was a year I did a presentation on the basics of sharpening, and it's still relevant. It was a 3-part YouTube video, and I'm going to put it all as one long video here, and you're going to watch in a minute. But that year was special to me because I did the sharpening certification right after I did that presentation, and I came in first place. And it was a very double-blind, very much more intense certification program than what we do with the International Scissor Sharpeners Association. We had a righty, we had a lefty, we had a beveled, we had a bent shear, we had serrations. It was a very intense, very scary test, and my score was the highest. Not a perfect score, but it was the highest. And the person that came in second the next year, he was first. So watch this video, and even though it's an oldie, the knowledge in here and the information has not changed. It's very intimidating for me to stand up here and talk to you about sharpening scissors. I've always made no bones about that I am not the world's greatest sharpener. I've never done the certification. I'm kind of a little nervous about it tomorrow. Dennis says I'm going to do okay, right? But I've never made any bones about being the best sharpener. But I think because sharpening did not come easy to me, I didn't have any natural talent at it, I'm a pretty patient teacher. And I've taught a lot of people to sharpen shears, and a lot of them have gone on to teach me things and are much better sharpeners than I am. But what I want to talk about today is that there's some basics of sharpening that you've got to do regardless of what machine you're using or you know, what your technique is. There's just some things that have to be done. And most of us, you know what those are, but maybe you haven't really articulated and thought about it. And I've got some kind of interesting videos too that I took, some close-ups. I bought one of those little microscopes and had some fun with it. So that's what I want to talk about today is, you know, back to basics. And as I said, most of you know I used to be a school teacher before I got into this. Taught high school science, and it's much more fun teaching scissor sharpeners because y'all are motivated.
Don't throw things most of the time.
Yeah, don't throw things. It's kind of dangerous being a school teacher. But some of the things you need to, we need to know is, and I came up with 7 basic points that you have to know when you go to sharpen scissors, is, what type of shear do you have? That's kind of basic. Is it a convex bevel? I'm assuming most everybody in this room knows the difference. If you call me with a sharpening question, the first thing I'm going to ask you is what kind of shear is it? And not necessarily is it convex or bevel. I like to know the name brand. And I might look it up on the internet, so I'm looking at it with you, because that makes a difference whether shear is made, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Another basic point is you got to know how to create a burr. Without a burr, no sharpening is going on. I mean, that's just essential. And how to remove the burr. the two go together. The correct pivot tension. And all of you know that's the #1 complaint from your stylists and your groomers is that your shears, they think they're dull and they're folding hair, and it's because they've got a loose screw. A lot of your customers have screw loose, don't they? How to create a flat ride or hone line. You got to have that flat ride, and whether your blades are aligned together, and the optimum angle of the shears. So you got to have these basic rules. And if any of those rules are broken, your shears aren't going to perform properly. You've got to have all of them. Now, we talked about what type of shear do you have, whether it's bevel, convex, and you have the convex edge and a beveled edge, sword edge. Y'all all know what sword edges are. You also have whether they're honed or not. Some of your beveled edges will be honed shears. You're going to take them apart, some aren't. Serrated. One of our guys with the Sharpeners Jam a couple of years ago, I think he got the 2nd prize for best ideas.
he just takes the serrated side, because he didn't have a serration file, and just leaves it very rough, maybe a 60 or 80 micron. But the trick is that he tells them it is a graduated serration, that they won't see the lines on it. Sort of like bifocal glasses, you don't see the lines. It's a progressive type of serration.
Sort of like if you charge it for replacing washers, don't call them washers, call them bushings.
But it works. It's not going to work well. It would be better than no serration at all, right, with a certification with dentists. But it's not going to get the same point as a true serration. But what I'm saying, there's ways around some of the things. Whether they're curved shears. When I do in the afternoon, for those especially the advanced people, when we do the centers back here, I'll show you how I do the ride line on curved shears, which is I came up with that. That's always been a real difficulty. Are they lefty shears? Those of you doing the serration, doing the certification, you will have a lefty shear. This is the first time we've had a lefty shear in the certification. So you have to know whether they're lefties. I've seen some people sharpen left-handed shears as a right-handed shear, and it's difficult to fix. And then, of course, are they thinners? And where are they made? Now, that's something you can't look on the shear anymore and tell where they're made. I see the smiling there. And it makes a difference where they're made, because some of these shears are made quality, and you can do a quality sharpening. Some of them, I mean, they're just, no matter what you do, you're not going to be able to get them to cut. And whether they're forged or they're cast, and that has to do with whether you're tweaking them or bending them. Now, this is the guy that makes our most expensive shear, which is the Shoto, and this is a gentleman he's in Taiwan. He's not in Japan, but he does all the workmanship from beginning to end. It's not done assembly line, and that's our most expensive, our best shear that we have. This is a picture of a Japanese factory I found online.
Notice the flat home.
Yeah, notice it's a flat home. Those of you that are using 6-inch flat homes or whatever make, you're using the same kind of tools that they're using in the top factories in Asia. This is a Taiwan scissor factory. This is one where some of our shears are made at this factory. This one I found online, and in fact they put it online, must admit they were proud of it. This was a factory in Pakistan. And I found some other similar pictures I could have put up here. And
is it a brick at the bottom?
I'm not sure what that is, but he's sitting on the ground. It almost looks like he's in a cave.
Well, that almost looks like a
He's convexing the shear on a belt.
on a belt. Yeah, it's a belt
yeah.
sander type thing. He's got some kind of flat home situation up there, and he's got a grinder too.
Yeah, and I found another picture in Pakistan where they were actually using like a 6-inch flat home, but it was sitting on a wooden block and on the ground. They're sitting on the ground doing it. And so, I mean, and I'm not talking negative about Pakistan scissors, but I am in a way, because some of those, you're just, no matter what you do, you're not going to be able to get them to cut right. If they're not made right, you're kind of stuck with it. Now, this is a picture of a shear that I had. You can take a look at it. It says Joel on it, big as life, and it's straight from Pakistan. Joel doesn't even have a model that looks like this, but a hairstylist might not know, or you might not know. So you can't go by what country of origin they say. You can't even go by what make it says on the shear anymore. So it makes it difficult. Have y'all had anybody yet knocking off your shears? And
Not that I know of.
not that I've heard there was some Bonikas in Texas that somebody did in Pakistan, and but I haven't been able to track them down. This is one I found on the internet. This is a fake Hikari. So even Hikari, and Hikari's got that on their website, so you can tell the difference on it. Just about all the major name brand shears, they're knocking them off. Now, I've got some knockoff purses from Pakistan, but that's, it's a little bit different. So, yeah, be careful of, where, and also if you as distributors, if somebody approaches you, and that's how we got that fake Pakistan scissor from Joel. The fake Joel scissor.
We did not pay for it.
We did not pay for it, but I had somebody that kept emailing me, want me to buy their Joel scissors from Pakistan. So I finally said, well, send me a sample so I can decide, and that's how we got it. But I mean, if someone has some scissors that you're suspicious of, you don't want to be part of this continue, because your reputation's on the line and you've got to maintain it. So so I'm going to go on to the burr. The burr is the key to sharpening. If you don't have a burr, you haven't done anything to the edge. The burr is that little raised little piece of metal. This is I've got out of Wikipedia. Where you roll that metal up, and if that burr is not there, now sometimes you can be fooled in thinking that you don't have a burr, because last year when we did the NBTG and I had sharpened a pair of shears and I passed it around for everybody to feel the burr, by the time the last person got it, he says, "There's no burr here." When you feel for that burr, you've got to have very, very gentle feather-like touch on it, because you don't want to knock it off. You don't want to fool yourself, because you may go on and create a bigger and bigger and bigger burr thinking you don't have one because you've knocked it off with your finger. If you have very callous fingers, usually your ring finger or this finger are your more sensitive ones, and you can feel the burr with them better than you can with your thumb or your pointer finger. If your fingers are real callous, I've had people I've trained that play guitars and what have you, and they're very callous. When you're doing your ride line, rub your fingers on that stone. Keep a couple of your fingers very sensitive to feeling for the burr. This is the size of a burr. If you don't have a nicked up scissor and the shear is just a little bit dull, this is the size of the burr. You don't have to have a big old honking burr to as long as it's there, as long as you've got down below the nicks, that's all the burr you need. If you have too big a burr, can you see it over here? This little looks like a hair. I'm going to go to this one. Here's the size of a hair, there's the size of the burr. If you have those great big old burrs, you're going to shorten the life of the shears. I've got some of my customers that take care of their shears. They don't, when they give them to me for sharpening, they don't have big nicks, and so I can just create little tiny burrs like this each time. And I've been, Howard shears, well, I've been sharpening for like 20 years. 20, yeah. They'll people say, how many times, how many years can I have these shears? If they take care of them. Now, if he put big nicks in them, I had to take off bigger burrs, that'd be different. But if you're just doing this little teeny tiny burr each time, those shears are going to last a long time. And you see, here's the burr right there. Look at that little tiny one. What's that dollar for?
He was paying for his coffee.
Paying for his coffee. I know, we sound like we're such poor people. We actually are, but, Our goal in life is to either for me to make as much money as I pay my daughter Misty, or as much money as my sharpeners make after they go out for training. But there's those of you that vendors know, it's not what you think it is. But that's the size of the burr. Is that surprising to anybody? I mean, because I know a lot of times when I've trained people that have already been sharpening, they're used to making a great big old burr. Now, you're feeling for the burr, you also want to look for the burr. You see how that has that little white line right here, that little shiny spot? That's a place there's no burr. Now, if you were feeling for the burr, you might feel right here at the tip, you might feel back here, and you think you've got the burr all the way down. And then when you cut with that shear, this little area is not going to cut right. So I always feel for the burr, and then I look in the light, and I'm looking for the little spot there where I'm not there. And sometimes it's only like 1 millimeter, 2 millimeters, but you'll see the little bit of light reflecting in there. Just turn it back and forth, and so you need to go back and get that spot. Oh, there's my little fancy arrow. I had fun with this. Now this is a video, and I'm going to show the edge. This is with my new little microscopic camera here. And can you see there, right here at that area, I'm not quite to the edge. So you've got to look at it in the light. I'm going to show it again. And you can see how that angle sort of changes right there. Do you see that? I think that's a spot there where you don't have a good edge work there. Now, if you have to use a visor with extra not a magnifier or something like that,
cheap glasses, dollar stores with a high magnification helps.
Yeah, it's important to see what you're doing, and the light's important. You've got to have good lighting, you've got to have good eyes. Chase the burr. That's when you're chasing the burr from one side to the other. And you've got to, yeah, that's what I call it, because you're moving the burr from one side to the other, till it's gone. And at one point, it's so that you can't really even see it or feel it, but you've got to make sure it's totally gone.
How do you move the burr from the outside of the shear back to the inside, and then from the inside to the outside?
Well, hopefully, eventually, it's going to break off.
I mean, do you do? Of course, you do your ride line and you create your burr.
Yeah.
And then with your polish, you're removing the burr on the outside. How would you remove it from the inside? Go back to your stone?
Yeah, you're going back to the stone, yeah. And then the final one, with me personally, I'll either cut a paper towel, or I will spread the blades apart so that they're closing and then opening, one of those two things. Because and that's what I'm going to show you here. I don't think you can see it with this picture, but there's a little teeny tiny amount of burr here. I'm going to come in closer. Do you see that little bit there? Now that's something you might not be able to see with your naked eye. And if you push that back and forth and it's still hitting there, what's going to happen is when you close the scissor, that burr, can you see the two little nicks right here? It's going to nick your shear. Now remember the size of the hair? A hair could get in there. If there's slide cutting, that's going to make a difference. So, and there's different techniques, Dennis, on making sure that's done. And but me personally, I mean, I'm going to the doing the ride, and I'm going back to the outside and going back to the inside until it's all gone.
And then leg, whatever.
Yeah. And also, I'm a fan of a nail buffer, the really smooth nail buffer. Now I've worked with one of the factories, and he wasn't too much of a fan of it, but I mean, everybody has their own, what I'm trying to say is you're going to kind of develop your own technique on some of these things. It's sort of like doing math in school. I mean, as long as you get to the right answer, if you've got a little different technique getting to the right answer, but you've got to keep these rules. You've got to keep these rules. So if somebody shows you something to do in sharpening and it breaks these rules, it's not going to work. Does that make sense? And the way I sharpen today, it's not exactly like I sharpened this time last year. And next year, if you see me sharpen, may be a little different than I'm doing now. And that's part of what this whole thing is about, for us to grow. But if someone shows you something new, hold it up against those rules. Is it going to break any of the rules? And then try it a little while before you adopt it. And then, you can develop your own technique. Ride line or hone line. Casper calls it the hone line. Dennis and I call it the ride line. This is that flat surface. When you're sharpening, when you've got a pair of shears that's really sharp, you've got to have a hone line or ride line for those blades not to cut into each other, so they go over each other. That's what makes the shear really smooth. This is a picture of the ride line. This is what we show at the schools when we're doing cosmetology classes. We show them where that ride line is. For you, I'll show you the ride line. You see it's making this backwards J, and this should move here. And you can follow this all the way down. Now you can see little scratches on that ride. This was a brand new shear. So you're going to see teeny tiny scratches on that ride, but you see how it goes all the way down, and it doesn't curve around at the tip. It stops right there. And here, once again, the ride line is making a backwards J coming all the way down here. Now this is a microscopic view of the ride line, and what I want to show you here is the angle. Here's the hollow. Do you see how the grind marks are here? And the grind marks here on the ride? You see how they're a little bit, they're not at right, they're not in a straight line? And the reason why, if you take your hands, put them together like this, rub your fingers. You feel how that's rough? But if you tilt it a little bit, it's smoother. So that ride line, you don't want this, you want to have your blade tilt a little bit on your stone so that those grind marks are sliding over each other, and it gives you a little bit more smoothness than if it's straight on. Does that make sense?
So you want to put the shear blade on the stone on 45 degrees.
Yeah,
if possible.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that, Did you have a comment on that, or?
You mean angle on the stone?
Angled on the stone, but it's flat on the stone.
Flat on stone.
It's flat on the stone. And it's
Like
hard,
this,
it's hard.
like
It's,
that.
Man, you got something new on me.
no, it's flat on the stone, but you don't want to have it, if the stone's here, and let's say you had a really wide stone, you would not want your shear at right angles to that stone coming up and down. It's flat on the stone.
And most of the time you can't.
And most of the time you can, and that's why you don't really need a really wide stone. But you do want to have it, but if you had like a little 4.5 inch shear, you still want to have it, like you said, 45 degree, or I don't know if it needs to be 45, but it needs to be a little bit
Some
different.
angle, so the pressure
So they don't line up.
Yeah,
to each other.
yeah. And that would be kind of the angle there. Now, you're going to hear people talk a lot about the twist to the shear, and you can see how this shadow, there's a twist to, you see how the shadow is? And the reason why is because the way that hollow is put in. The hollow is put in this angle, not straight from the back to the tip, but angled in, where they're hollowed out the inside of the blade. And that creates a little bit of a twist to the blade. That's one of the reasons why you see the tip wipe out so easy, is because it's not as much of a hollow here as there is back here. And the only part of the shear that is actually flat is right here at the pivot. This is the only area that's flat. The rest of it's not flat. If you were to lay it flat on your stone, there's a little tiny, tiny, tiny amount of space between the back area of that blade and your stone. Only that cutting edge, only that right edge is touching. And that's why when you're moving it up and down on your water stone, you're only getting that ride line on that one side.
Start getting on the backside, it means the scissors wearing down, is getting old. Time to replace it.
Yeah, or you've got bad technique.
Bad technique, yeah.
Bad technique. One of the things I do when I'm training people and trying to make sure that they hold the right on the stone, because it's hard for me to look at somebody and tell, is I have them color Sharpie all the way down one side and up the back, both sides, so that if there's red, if the red Sharpie's gone on the back, they kind of know maybe they're not holding it just right. Now the shear alignment are set. This is the part of sharpening I hate. And you can really, you have to be aware of it. Whether you decide you're going to be a person that tweaks the shears or align them or set them or whatever your terminology is, you can get by without doing that as long as you're aware of this. Because if the set is off, the alignment's off, just you can sell them a new pair. But you've got to know, because otherwise you may sharpen them. And you may have them adjusted right, and you may have everything done right, but they don't cut. And you're like, why don't they cut? And so a novice sharpener, or like I used to do way back when I started out, because I didn't know anything about set when I started out back in 88, 89, I would just sharpen them again, make them sharper, make them blunter, change the angle. Sometimes if you make them a more blunter, you can make them cut, even if the set's off. Usually if shear's not cutting and you want to change the angle going down more blunt, covers some of the covers up some sins there. But the alignment, does everybody in here understand what I'm talking about when I talk about the set or the alignment? I think might be a few new people in here that might not, but that's the way the two blades curve toward each other, and they've got to have that perfect curve so that they hit one place all the way down, because if one blade is skewed out, it's not going to cut. And that's one of the things that you do between the master and the journeyman, is the master sharpener has to know how to set that alignment. So you don't have to be able to set the alignment to be a wealthy, successful sharpener, but you do have to know how to do it if you want to be a master sharpener, and if you want to go in and know, hey, I can fix this. And if you take trade-ins, which is what we like to do, you can get shears that are out of alignment, they're trade-in, and then go home and fix them and then sell them to somebody. This is a picture from a factory where they're checking the alignment on a parallel bar. And they press down. That's something we make, when you go around to the centers, we can show you exactly how that's done if you're interested in that. And you're checking for the light under it and seeing how that blade is shaped. This is the only picture I could find on the internet where they're putting in the hollow and the shear. And it's not that good a picture, but you see how the stone is. We've taken, 3 tours, I think, of the Eichert factory, and I saw the machine in the corner, but they wouldn't let us watch it in operation. That's kind of the real secret, is what is that angle and exactly how that hollow is put in. Those that here 2 years ago, the Hanako scissors that were here at the NBTG, they actually, they don't have a clamp. They by hand put the hollow in. They put some kind of a magical twist to it, you know. So it gets really secretive on some of this thing. But that is where, in my opinion, makes the difference between a shear that I can sharpen, make it work right, and a shear maybe that's coming from Pakistan or some other country where it's not made correctly, and no matter what I do, I can't make it cut right, is in the way that hollow is put in. Because that creates that twist, and that creates that correct curve, and that seems to be what separates not so much the steel, but is that workmanship that separates, in my opinion, a good pair of shears and one that I can't train on. So, but this, as I said, this is a picture I found on the internet of the factory. Now, there's different ways to correct alignment. This is actually a picture of the factory where they're hitting it. I'm of the bending persuasion. Casper, I know, is of the bending persuasion. He has a lot of technical reasons for it. My reason is I'm doing my sharpening in the salons, and I'm not about to let them see me pull out a hammer. I came back from the NSG one time, and I watched all these people do these alignments and everything, and I went back just as brave. Oh, I can do this. Somebody handed me a Joel Cobalt. Anybody who knows anything about a Joel Cobalt knows exactly what happened. I had my little hammer.
Bending block when you sharpen. You don't get to see the bending block.
So that was. I went a number of years without attempting bending after that little fiasco, and I had to buy him a new Joel. But there's some shears that you just don't bend. Joel Cobalt is one of them. Some shears, all of our shears that have purple screws, or amethyst screws on them, do not bend them.
Joel Cobalt you're talking about are the Joels with the little chicken on them?
Yeah.
Chicken on it, don't bend.
Yeah. It kind of inspired us to do our fish logo on our shears. We use the fish logo because, well, number one, we're Christians, and that's kind of the symbol of Christians. And it's enough different that it doesn't offend people who aren't Christians. But also the fish is kind of a universal sign. I mean, fish doesn't know any boundaries or countries. It goes from one place to the other, and the symbolism of teach a man to fish. You can eat for a lifetime, and that's kind of been our philosophy with the sharpening and with our shears. But back to the alignment thing. But you've got to be careful what kind of shears they are, whether they're forged or they're cast, and you can't always tell. I've asked different manufacturers and different people. I don't know if you know any secret ways of knowing cast and forged. Casper gave me, you can ask him tomorrow his story. I might not take that away from him, but he has this thing about you can taste it or smell it or something, and then he starts laughing. And then I talked to the guy with Hanako scissors, and he said something. Yeah, he said something in Korean. He doesn't speak English. He said something in Korean, and his wife started laughing. And I said, "Okay, translate." And she said, "He said that if you bend it and it breaks, it's cast. If it doesn't, it's forged."
That's the definitive test.
And then I told Dennis, I liked what he was talking about yesterday in his class. His class yesterday was awesome. So if next year. We're planning on having that class at their Sharpeners Jam, so people have time to take the class and practice what you taught them, and maybe have it here too. But his class was excellent, and he was talking about how far to bend a pair of shears, and he says bend it and stop just before it breaks. But we didn't break any shears in the class yesterday, right? No, none were broken. But you got to know when to bend and when not to bend. We do have a video from our Sharpeners Jam, when to bend and when not to bend, from Casper. He doesn't necessarily go into showing you how to bend. He just talks about when to bend and when not to bend. So we've got a special where we do have another video on how to bend that we are coupling with it. But Bending is something I've stayed away from, but if you're going to do the certification and be a master, you've got to know that.
Before you go on, just
Yes.
let point out that at the factory, the person who does this, as long as they break less than 3% of the shears when they do this, they're happy with them. So the person who does this all day long, and that's all they do, they have a 3% breakage rate. It's actually 2 to 3%, but so even, don't feel too bad if you break something, because even the guy who that's all he does for a living, he breaks them too.
Yes, some of our practice shears. Yeah, you had a comment on that?
Just a question. When you say bending, you mean setting it?
Setting.
Setting,
Right. Just
And it's different terms. I think Dennis uses tweaking, which I like that.
Tweaking,
I like
bending,
tweaking,
setting.
bending,
I use
setting.
tweaking for the cosmetologist. They don't like to know that I'm bending their shears.
Yeah, and a lot of times when I'm talking to cosmetologists, and I know this is not the correct term, but I'll tell them your shears are warped, and that I need,
Need to tweak them.
yeah. But you're going to hammer it, or you can bend them, or whatever for the set. Do y'all hammer or
We'll do
bend?
both based on what's needed, but the first thing as we're teaching somebody, we give them a couple different shears and then we tell them to break it. Take the hammer, hit it, and see what it takes to actually break the blade. When I learned, that's what they had me do. So I intentionally broke my fair set of shears and then accidentally broke a couple.
I haven't broke too many, like I said, because I don't do that too much. In fact, that Joel's the only one I can remember breaking. The guy that did our video and taught a class on how to bend shears at our Sharpeners Jam a few years ago worked with us in New York, and I think he broke 3 at the New York, 2 at the IBS New York Hair Show, which is so. Now I'm going to talk.
But he did 100 shears, so he was in his.
I'm going to talk about the edge on the shears, and this was something, like I told you, I'm a little intimidated when I'm up here with all these master sharpeners, and I was at the NBTG, I don't remember if it was last year or the year before, and Larry went around the room about what's the angle you normally sharpen shears at, and it's 45, 45, 45. Everybody in the room was saying 45, and I said, I do a lot of them at 40. It's kind of brave to say. From the factory, I'm finding pretty much all the good quality shears are going to be a 45-degree angle or higher. Some of our shears are 50. Our fishbone is 60 degrees. By the way, we're using those American angles, not the not the Japanese ones, which is the opposite. The sharper their edge, of course, easier it is to slide cut, but the faster they go dull. The blunter the edge, the stronger the edge. So you want to, I customize the edge on the shears when I sharpen them to my customer. If I know they're not slide cutting, if I know they're working at one of those salons where a lot of times the hair is not washed, and they're just doing straight cutting, and they're going to judge my sharpening by how long the shears go between sharpening, I'll do it a 40-degree angle. Now, I don't usually go lower than a 40-degree angle on a convex edge, because if you go lower than that, it starts pushing the hair. Yes, you look like you want to make a comment there. So.
No, but in many of that, you have to not only look at the stylus, you have to look at the shear and what it's made of.
Exactly,
If
exactly.
it's VG10 or ATS 314, you could put a 50 on it.
You are exact. That's the next thing.
Or 20,
yes.
you got to put a 40 on.
And there's some of the shears that I'll sharpen that someone will give me that might have come from the factory at a 45-degree angle, but a 45 is not going to hold up on that shear. They put that angle on it, or I've seen some of them 50-degree angle. They put that shear on it in order to sell at the hair show, so they'd be nice and sharp.
First time they use it, wonderful.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So there's a lot of the shears, when I go back to sharpen it, because of the quality, I have to change the angle on it.
But,
yeah.
According to Ube, there's something magic about the 45, because supposedly that's when the force vector changes from push to cut.
Yeah, and it is.
A lot of good sharpeners will try to always exceed 45 in other words, to set their clamp halfway between 45 and 50 and get that 47, 48, which you can tell the difference. It works better. If it's a good metal.
If it's a good metal, So, and what I do is I write on my receipt and on my records what angle I sharpen that shear at. So when I go back in and they say, hey, they were happy with it, I know what angle, I don't have to stop and think, because I use a clamp, I don't freehand. Now this is hard to do if you're freehanding. That's one of the reasons I advocate using a clamp, one of the many reasons. But if they say, hey, those shears seem to go dull real fast, I'll say, well, do you slide cut? Well, no, not very much. Well then, and that you can slide cut with a 40, it's just not going to slide cut as well. And then I might tweak, that's where I use my word tweaking. I might tweak and change the angle up or down depending on what they want. Or they say, can you make it a little sharper this time? Well, then I know I did it 40, I might want to do it 45. But I keep up with that. And it's like I said, it's the two things. As a stylist, number one, how they're using the shears, and number two, it's the quality of the shear. And once again, we go back to what we talked about at the beginning. You can't tell by what it says. Just because it says Japan and cobalt on the back of the shear doesn't mean it's Japan and cobalt.
And there's a lot of these new dry cut shears that come from the factory at 55 or even better.
Yeah, as I said, our fishbone, which you use as a razor and a shear, it needs to be 60 or you can't razor with it. But it's a hard enough cobalt, it holds it pretty good. My last two slides I have here this is slide cutting with a shear with a 35-degree angle. Can you see what the ends of the hair looks like here? If someone has a dull pair of shears, they're going to get split ends. From their customer's going to get split ends because their scissors don't have a sharp angle to them. And then this is slide cutting the same type of hair with a shear that's been sharpened at 45 degrees. And you can see there's a little bit, where's my arrow here? There's a little bit of thinning here at the end where we did slide cutting, but it's a little bit more of a blunt, and you don't have that frizzing and the split ends that you would have with a duller shear. So that's something to tell your clients if they're trying to go too long without having their shears sharpened and they're slide cutting or they're buying cheaper scissors. They're actually giving their customers split ends and frizzy hair.
I don't think they teach. I know at the schools in my area, they don't teach anything about the scissors that they need for slide cutting. I had a lady last Thursday that she said their shears doesn't slide cut very well. So I looked at them, and they were a prom blazer with corrugation on them. And I'm like, these won't slide cut, honey. I said, you're not going to get any slide cut on these. She said, well, I wondered about that. And I showed her what shear to use. And, I said, you use convex smooth edge shear.
Now, I don't want to be talking over anybody's head. Does everybody know what we mean when we say slide cutting? They're opening the shears and slide. Now, I don't do a lot of groomers. Do groomers do any slide cutting?
No.
Typically, when I sharpen a groomer shear, I will do it at a 40-degree angle. I won't do it at 45 because I figure they're not slide cutting and the scissors are falling on the floor. But I may be wrong. My specialty is the beauty shears. So those of you do groomers, what angle do you normally do them at? Or
I do 45.
Do you?
On the convex edge.
On the convex edge shear for the groomers?
I simply do that because even though, and I warn my customers that the edge is going to be more fragile, but you're going to have a lot less hair push.
Okay.
So that's why I tell them everybody seems to be fine with that.
And I think if you can, if you're not interrupting the stylist or the groomer, consult with them and tell them I have a choice here on the angle, and that's impressive to them. That you can customize the angle to them. Is it more, which is more important to you, to go a little longer between sharpening or, to have where you have less effort in cutting and less push of the hair. Yeah. Well, any questions about any of this? I think that's the methods of sharpening may vary. You might have different ways of getting there, but you've got to have these basics. Any questions about anything I covered? I didn't really get into how to do this, but that's for what we're going to, in the afternoon, we're going to have centers set up here where you're going to actually be able to sit and go and see some people sharpen. Yes?
I have a comment on that picture. Can we
The one before?
the slide, the comparison between the...
Yeah, what I was planning on doing, he's videotaping this. What I'm planning on doing is maybe putting this on what I just talked about on YouTube rather than a video, but I can also put it on where you can get those pictures, because that was...
Years ago, I seen a picture where someone cut with like a corrugated shear or whatever, where it's actually catching the hair and then it's just like cutting it off. That's actually crushing the hair a little bit as it cuts, as compared to something with I'm going to say sharper angle,
Right.
where it slices through the hair. I've been telling these people, that was years ago I seen it, so I tell them, I said, you're actually doing the frizzy end stuff with the people's hair by using a cheaper scissor, or just having it done on a grindstone type thing. Because I have some guys that use grindstones for like their dog grooming, then they go into the salons, and it cuts hair.
Yeah.
It definitely cuts hair, but you're damaging that end of that hair.
You're kind of pinching it instead of cutting.
Yeah, pinching it.
Yeah. And this was as close of...
That's a good
This was as close as I could get the picture, but I know when I've talked to other some of the manufacturers, and they talk about the difference between a razor, which is like an angle, and then the shear where it cuts. It's a pinch type of thing. So yeah, it's a little different.
Yeah, so
the way the hair would behave.
If you're in a higher end salon and you tell them, you're explaining it to them, it's going to help hold down that split ends.
Yeah, because some of their clients may go somewhere else. They say, for some reason, every time I go to the salon, my hair looks frizzy and I get split ends. When I go to this other salon, I don't know if the shampoo, they may not understand why, but when I go to this other salon, the haircut doesn't look as frizzy. So they may be losing clients and not even realize it because they've got the wrong shears and they're cutting wrong.
So if you enjoyed that video, subscribe and look at all my other videos. I have over 700 videos. I have a YouTube channel, as you know, that's about sharpening, Bonnie shears, but I have one on International Scissor Sharpeners Association. I have one, Love to Cut. Facebook, I have a Facebook group, which is the Sharpeners Jam, and of course the website. You can get more information. I do personal training. I do online training. We're constantly trying to do things to improve the lives and the incomes of sharpeners. So take a look around, and I hope to see you maybe at a Sharpeners Jam or sharpening convention soon. And I'm almost at 10,000 subscribers, so please subscribe and help me get to that number. That's my goal.